Imagine, if you will, a life so meticulously planned and predictable that the greatest adventure one might anticipate is choosing which novel to read next. That was my world. At 62, a serene tableau of gardening in the morning, the rustle of pages in the afternoon, and quiet evenings with my husband Mark, where we would gently stroll down memory lane. But life, in its infinite jest, had a twist in store, a revelation that would unravel the very fabric of my existence. It all began on a crisp evening, under the shimmering lights of a corporate gala in downtown Chicago. Mark, my steadfast partner of over 3 decades, had climbed the corporate ladder with unwavering dedication at his company. This event, hosted by his employer, was supposed to be just another evening of polite nods and forced smiles. The venue was an upscale hotel, its grand chandeliers casting a warm, almost conspiratorial glow over the elegantly attired guests. The air was alive with the hum of conversation, the clinking of crystal glasses, and the soulful strains of a jazz band tucked away in a corner. Evelyn, not particularly enamored with these social gatherings, had reluctantly donned a modest navy blue dress at Mark's insistence. The evening seemed to unfold with the usual predictability, Mark engrossed in shop talk, and I engaging in light conversation with the other spouses. But then Richard Caldwell, Mark's boss, a man of quiet authority and distinguished demeanor, approached me. His presence was commanding, his confidence palpable. "Evelyn, may I have a moment?" His voice, deep and resonant, cut through the din of the room. I paused, a flutter of curiosity and apprehension mingling within me. What could this man, whom I had only ever greeted with a courteous nod at previous events, possibly want with me? With a hesitant smile, I agreed and followed him, my heart unexpectedly racing through the crowd. In the hushed corridor, away from the grand ballroom's clamor, the air seemed to hold its breath. As we distanced ourselves from the gala's festive echoes, he led me to a secluded lounge, a sanctuary of sorts with its soft, dim lighting, a crackling fireplace, and inviting leather armchairs. Here the tension was palpable, an unspoken force that quickened my pulse as I settled into my seat opposite him. "I hope I'm not pulling you away from anything crucial," he ventured, his smile tinged with a nervous edge. "Not at all," I replied, though my curiosity was a bubbling cauldron within me. "What's on your mind?" With a sigh, he clasped his hands as if to coax the words from within. "It's about Mark," he finally said. At those words, I straightened my stomach, nodding with apprehension. "Is something wrong?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He paused, his hesitation speaking volumes. "Not exactly, but there's something you should know." His gaze held a gravity that made my heart race, a quiet intensity that seemed to weigh down the air around us. "Evelyn," he continued, his voice a blend of gentleness and firmness, "I've known Mark for a long time. I've seen him craft his career, support his peers, and care for his family. Yet through all this, I've noticed something." I swallowed, my throat tight with anticipation. "What is it?" My words were a mere breath. Leaning slightly forward, his eyes locked onto mine, he delivered his revelation with a solemnity that struck like a thunderclap. "He doesn't appreciate you the way he should." The words hit me like a physical blow, my breath catching a surge of defensiveness rising within me. I don't understand," I managed to stammer out. "Mark is a good husband. He's always been—" Richard nodded, his expression one of understanding. "I know he is, but tell me, Evelyn, when was the last time he truly saw you, not just as his—" As I stood there, my mouth agape, words eluding me like a startled bird fleeing its nest, Richard's voice softened to a tender whisper. "I've witnessed the way you gaze at him, Evelyn, in those moments when he's too engrossed to notice. You ever the supportive shadow at these gatherings while he consumed by his work seems to lose himself? You pour your heart into everything, but does he ever return the favor? A knot tightened in my throat, a silent protest caught there, yearning to refute his claim, yet a part of me trembled with doubt. Richard leaned back, his eyes searching mine, as if he could see right through the facade I wore. "I don't wish to intrude," he confessed, "but sometimes those on the outside see what's invisible to those entangled within." My breath escaped in a slow, deliberate release, my thoughts a whirlwind. He studied my expression, then offered a smile that seemed to know too much. "Evelyn, you deserve to be seen." He declared, his words piercing through layers of my own denial. The phrase struck a nerve, awakening a dormant realization. For the first time in ages, I was engulfed in uncertainty, frozen in place. Richard's words reverberated in my mind, stirring emotions I wasn't prepared to face. Had I truly become invisible, I wanted to dismiss his observations as mere kindness, a well-meaning but misguided gesture. Yet deep within, a voice whispered the truth. Richard was right. Mark, my steadfast provider, had always been there, reliable as the sunrise. But when was the last time he truly saw me? When did he last notice the countless small acts of love I scattered like seeds throughout our life together? The shirts folded just as he liked our home, adorned with his favorite things. My unwavering support through every career milestone, did any of it register? In that quiet moment, I cleared my throat, the silence around us heavy with unspoken truths. As Richard's words settled like a heavy stone in my chest, I held up a hand, halting his earnest speech. "I don't mean to discomfort you." He began, his voice a blend of concern and conviction, but I couldn't simply watch and say nothing. My breath escaped in a slow, deliberate exhale, the air around us thick with unspoken thoughts. "I value your honesty," I replied, my voice a mere whisper, betraying the tumult within. "Mark and I have journeyed through decades together. Marriage, it's not just about being seen, but about commitment, about stability." Richard nodded, his eyes holding mine with an intensity that made me feel both exposed and understood. "I understand, and I respect that deeply," he said, leaning in, his gaze unwavering. "But have you ever truly contemplated what you want, Evelyn?" The question hung in the air, a silent plea for introspection. What did I want? For so many years, my focus had been on Mark's needs, our marriage's demands, the expectations placed upon me. I had never allowed myself the luxury of considering my own desires. A nervous chuckle escaped my lips, breaking the tension. "Richard, this is quite the conversation for a corporate gallery, isn't it?" His smile was gentle, knowing. "Perhaps it is, but something urged me to voice it." The silence that followed was filled only by the soft crackling of the fireplace, a comforting yet stark contrast to the storm of thoughts brewing within me. He sighed, rising from his seat. "I should let you return." I stood too, my hands smoothing my dress, trembling slightly. "Yes, Mark will wonder where I've wandered off to." Richard nodded, his expression unreadable, a blend of concern and something else I couldn't quite decipher. "Evelyn just promised me one thing," he said, his voice earnest. "What's that?" I asked, tilting my head. "Don't dismiss what I've said. Think about it." His request was simple, yet it weighed on me like a solemn vow. I hesitated, then nodded slowly. "All right." He gave a small, encouraging smile before stepping aside, gesturing towards the door. As I walked past him, the warmth of his presence lingered, the gravity of our exchange still pressing against my heart. When I returned, the gala was still in full swing, its energy pulsating through the air. Mark, my steadfast husband, was right where I had left him, engaged in deep, animated discussion with his colleagues. From a distance, I watched him unnoticed at first, his face alive with fervor, his hands punctuating his words with a rhythm I had always adored. How I loved the sight of him driven by passion. But then, Richard's words crept into my thoughts like unwelcome shadows. Had Mark ever regarded me with such intensity? Finally, Mark's eyes met mine across the room, and he offered a subtle nod before diving back into his conversation. A subtle shift occurred within me. Richard had sown a seed of doubt, and despite my efforts to dismiss it, I felt it taking root, burgeoning within me. The drive home was cloaked in silence. Mark sat next to me, his hands clutching the steering wheel, his focus unwavering on the road ahead, while the city lights blurred into streaks of light. My mind, however, was adrift with Richard's haunting echo, "You deserve to be seen." I stole a glance at Mark. He looked weary, the faintest hint of stress etched between his brows. We had shared nearly 4 decades of marriage, and in that time, I had committed every detail of his face to memory. The sharp contours of his jaw, the laughter lines around his eyes, the concentrated purse of his lips. Yet when was the last time he truly saw me? Breaking the quiet, Mark cleared his throat, his voice almost tentative. "Did you have a good time tonight?" The question, a routine inquiry after every event, every gathering, felt more like a formality than a genuine interest. Did he really want to know? Or was it just another part of the script we followed night after night? As the train of our conversation chugged along, I hesitated, my curiosity piqued, yet my heart heavy with unspoken thoughts. Mark, with a distant nod, murmured, "Good, good." And just like that, our dialogue dwindled into silence. My eyes wandered back to the window, watching the vibrant cityscape blur into the quieter hues of the suburbs. Once home, Mark performed his habitual dance jacket off keys on the counter, a swift retreat to his office for a final email check. I lingered in the kitchen, the emptiness where he had stood enveloping me in a sudden poignant solitude. I wasn't angry, not precisely. Mark was as constant as the stars. His dedication to work and his unwavering routines had provided me with a life of comfort, of security. Yet Richard's words had stirred something deep within, a whisper of discontent I could no longer ignore. I drifted to the bedroom, my reflection catching me off guard in the mirror. At 62, my once fiery auburn hair now bore the silver streaks of time, and the lines on my face were gentle reminders of the years that had passed. But my eyes, they remained unchanged, and within them I glimpsed something startling. A loneliness I hadn't acknowledged in ages. Had I merely accepted this slow fade into the background as a natural part of aging, this quiet retreat into routine. For the first time, I questioned the life I had so willingly embraced. The next morning, as Mark prepared to leave for another day at the office, he kissed my cheek, his voice a soft echo in the morning light. "I'll be home late. There's a big client meeting." I managed a small smile, my voice barely above a whisper. "All right, be safe." And then he was gone, leaving me in the doorway, my heart heavy with unspoken words. Normally, I would immerse myself in the daily rituals of Aaron's housework, or perhaps the soothing rhythm of gardening. But today, an unfamiliar restlessness stirred within me, a yearning for something more, something I couldn't quite name. In the midst of my swirling thoughts, I reached for my phone, my fingers trembling slightly as they dialed a number I never imagined I'd need again. Richard picked up almost immediately, his voice tinged with the slightest hint of astonishment. "Evelyn," he asked, his tone betraying a flicker of surprise. I took a deep, steadying breath. "Do you have time for a cup of coffee?" I ventured, my voice barely above a whisper. After a pause that felt like an eternity, he replied softly, "Of course." An hour later, I was seated opposite him in a serene cafe by the lake, where the scent of roasted coffee beans mingled with the crisp aroma of autumn pastries. The leaves outside fluttered in the gentle breeze, as if whispering secrets of the seasons. Richard's gaze was one of quiet curiosity, his eyes searching mine for answers. "I wasn't sure if I'd hear from you," he admitted, his voice low. I stirred my coffee, watching the cream swirl into the dark brew, mirroring the turmoil within me. "I wasn't sure I'd call," I confessed, my voice barely a murmur. He nodded, waiting patiently, his expression unreadable. I exhaled slowly, gathering my thoughts. "I've been thinking about what you said." I started, my gaze meeting his. There was a flicker in his eyes, a spark of something unnamed. "Evelyn, I'm not saying I regret my life," I interjected gently, my voice firm yet tender. "Mark and I have built something strong, something real. But somewhere along the way, I think I lost the ability to desire something just for myself." Richard leaned forward, his interest piqued. "And now?" he prompted. I swallowed hard, the weight of my next words heavy on my tongue. "Now, I'm not sure," I admitted, the silence between us filled only by the distant murmur of other patrons. Finally, Richard spoke, his voice a soothing balm. "I just want you to be happy." I looked at him, truly looked at him. Here was a man with no reason to delve into the complexities of my life, no reason to say the words he had, except that he had glimpsed something in me that I had overlooked. In that moment, the realization dawned on me with startling clarity. I have a choice to make. Across the cafe table, my fingers curled around the comforting warmth of my coffee mug, as Richard's words lingered in the air, heavy yet tender, like a truth I'd long evaded. For years, I'd convinced myself that contentment sufficed, that security, stability, and loyalty formed the bedrock of a good life. And they did. Yet Richard had unearthed something within me, something I hadn't realized was absent, a deep-seated need to truly feel. I inhaled slowly, the gravity of my thoughts weighing upon me like a tangible force. "Richard," I murmured, my voice laced with uncertainty. "I don't know what to do with all of this." His gaze softened, a gentle light in his eyes. "You don't have to do anything, Edelyn," he replied, his voice a soothing balm. "Just consider what makes you happy." "When was the last time you did something purely for yourself?" I parted my lips to answer, then paused. Decades had passed in the service of Mark's dreams, his career, his world. I had sculpted a life of meticulous order and routine. But what about me? What had I done for myself? I sipped my coffee, its rich, bitter warmth momentarily anchoring me. "I don't know who I am outside of my marriage." I confessed, the words startling in their honesty. Richard's smile was small knowing. "Then perhaps it's time to find out," he suggested, his voice a whisper of encouragement. A nervous, breathy laugh escaped me. "That sounds terrifying, doesn't it?" I managed to say, my heart pounding with a mix of fear and exhilaration. "Perhaps," he conceded, "but isn't it also exciting?" I didn't respond, couldn't respond, because deep down, I knew he was right. We sat in silence for a while, the world outside continuing its relentless pace, cars driving by, laughter in the air, the wind whispering through the golden autumn leaves. Life didn't stop for introspection, but maybe, just maybe for the first time, I needed to. I set my cup down, locking eyes with Richard. "I don't know what the future holds, Richard, but I do know that I need to start living again." A smile tugged at the corner of his lips, a faint sign of relief. "That's all I ever wanted you to realize." That night, when Mark came home, I was already at the kitchen table, a sentinel in the quiet of our home. He barely acknowledged me as he set down his briefcase and loosened his tie. "Long day," he muttered, exhaustion coloring his words. I watched him, this man with whom I had built a life, whom I had loved for decades. Yet, as he moved around the house, a chasm stretched between us, one I hadn't noticed growing over the years. Taking a deep breath, I called out, "Mark, can we talk?" He paused, finally glancing my way. "About what?" His voice was weary, his eyes searching. I swallowed the words heavy on my tongue. "About us." His brows furrowed slightly. "What about us?" I hesitated, then the dam broke and out poured the words that had been building inside me since last night. "I feel invisible, Mark." His eyes widened in shock. "What?" I continued, my voice gaining strength. "I feel like I've spent years being the wife who supports you, who keeps things running, who ensures our life stays steady. And I do love you, but somewhere along the way, I stopped being seen." He frowned, clearly caught off guard. "Evelyn, where is this coming from?" I shook my head, a sad smile touching my lips. "It's been there for a long time, Mark. I just never let myself say it out loud." He sat down across from me, rubbing a hand over his face. "I didn't know you felt this way." He admitted, his voice a mix of confusion and concern. I studied him, this man who had shared my life, yet seemed so distant. Did he ever wonder about the silence that had grown between us? In that silent moment, I realized something painful. Mark wasn't a bad husband, not cruel or neglectful on purpose. He had simply assumed, as I had, that everything was fine. But was it? Had our marriage become nothing more than a routine, where comfort was enough and we no longer needed to truly connect as we once did? But that wasn't living, that wasn't love. Not anymore. "What are you saying?" he finally asked, his voice cautious, laden with an unspoken fear. I inhaled deeply, the weight of my words pressing down on my chest. "I need to start living for me again." I confessed, my voice a mix of resolve and sorrow. His face paled, a shadow of uncertainty crossing his features. "Are you leaving me?" he whispered, his eyes searching mine for reassurance. I hesitated, then shook my head. "I don't know what the future holds, Mark, but I do know that I can't continue like this. If we want our marriage to survive, something has to change." He looked at me, and for the first time in years, I saw a flicker in his eyes, realization perhaps. Maybe we had a chance to mend what was broken. Maybe we didn't. But for the first time in decades, I was ready to discover the truth. Thank you for joining us on this heartfelt journey. Your support means the world to us. Please leave a comment with your thoughts, like this video if it resonated with you. Share it with those who might need to hear this message, and consider subscribing to our channel for more stories that touch the soul. Remember, every view, every interaction helps us to continue sharing these important narratives. Together, let's keep the conversation alive